Desperate voices. The orbital defense platform shuddered as another plasma lance tore through its shields. Commander Taven Kress gripped the railing of the observation deck, watching his homeworld of Voranth burn beneath a blanket of enemy fire. 3 of the planet's 5 moons had already been reduced to glowing debris fields. The Kryn swarm didn't conquer. They consumed. All defensive batteries are offline, Commander. Officer Mira Solvin reported, her violet-tinted skin pale with exhaustion. She'd been at her station for 36 hours straight, sending distress signals to every corner of known space. Every frequency, every protocol. The responses had been the same. Bureaucratic delays, political excuses, or worse, silence. Taven's jaw tightened. The Galactic Assembly had branded this a regional dispute, as if the systematic extinction of his people was merely a border skirmish. 18 colony worlds had fallen in the past year, 18 species erased from existence, and the Assembly debated procedure. How many transports made it out? He asked quietly. Mira's voice cracked. 47 ships, maybe 200,000 civilians. Out of 8 billion. The number hit like a physical blow. Taven closed his eyes, thinking of his brother's family, his childhood friends, the children he'd watched play in Voranth's crystal gardens. All gone now, or soon to be. Send one more signal, he said. Full spectrum. Maximum power. Address it to anyone still listening in this God's-forsaken galaxy. Sir, we're almost out of power. If we drain the core, do it. Mira hesitated only a moment before her fingers flew across the console. The message was simple, raw. This is Commander Taven Kress of Voranth. We are dying. Our world is dying. If there is anyone left who remembers what mercy means, please, please help us. The transmission burned through the station's remaining power, cascading into the darkness between stars. The lights dimmed. Emergency systems kicked in with a dull red glow. They waited in silence. Mira slumped in her chair, tears cutting tracks down her face. The Kryn vessels moved closer, their organic hulls pulsing with bioluminescent hunger. Taven began composing his final log entry, then the communications array erupted with static. Commander, Mira bolted upright. We're receiving a response. Assembly frequency. No, sir. Unknown origin. The encryption is, I've never seen anything like this. Through the crackling interference, a voice emerged, clear, calm, and speaking in flawless galactic standard with an accent that hadn't been heard in 2 centuries. Voranth. This is Captain Helena Vance of the Terran Expeditionary Fleet. We received your call. Hold position. We're coming. Taven's breath stopped. Mira stared at the console as if it had spoken prophecy. Terrans, she whispered. But they're extinct. They vanished after the Exile Wars. The sensors suddenly screamed. Spatial distortions. Massive ones. Appearing from the outer system. Contact! The tactical officer shouted. Multiple vessels emerging from dark space. Signature unknown. Configuration unknown. Mass readings are impossible. Through the viewport, space itself seemed to tear. And through those wounds in reality, ships emerged, sleek, angular, bristling with weapons that humanity had 200 years to perfect in isolation. They had come. Against all odds, humanity had answered. Ghosts of the Rim. The bridge of the TS Relentless hummed with controlled energy. Captain Helena Vance stood before the tactical display, her gray eyes scanning the battlefield with practiced precision. Behind her, Lieutenant James Ramirez coordinated the fleet's positioning. His voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were about to do. Ma'am, we have 53 Kryn capital ships and over 200 support vessels, James reported. They're repositioning to engage us, Helena nodded slowly. 2 centuries. 200 years since humanity had walked away from galactic politics, driven out by fear and prejudice after they'd refused to share certain technologies. The other species had called them dangerous, unstable. They'd been exiled to the outer dark, expected to fade into extinction. Instead, they'd thrived. They'd built. They'd waited. Open a channel to the Kryn command vessel. Helena ordered. The view screen flickered, revealing a creature of nightmare, the Kryn overlord, its chitinous body studded with cybernetic implants, multiple eyes glowing with predatory intelligence. When it spoke, its voice was a wet, clicking rasp. Unknown vessels. You dare interfere with the swarm's feeding? Identify yourselves before we add your biomass to our collective. Helena's expression remained neutral. I am Captain Helena Vance, commanding the Terran Expeditionary Fleet. You have one opportunity to withdraw from this system. The Overlord's mandibles clattered in what might have been laughter. Terrans, the extinct species, we consumed your abandoned stations decades ago. Your bones make excellent structural material. Something flickered in Helena's eyes, a cold, ancient rage. Those weren't our stations. Those were warnings. You should have heeded them. Your threats are Lieutenant Ramirez. Helena interrupted smoothly. Demonstration protocol. Target the moon fragment at heading 270. Yes, ma'am, the Relentless hummed. A single turret rotated, gathering energy that made the surrounding space ripple. The lance that erupted wasn't plasma or particle beam. It was something else, something that made reality scream. The moon fragment, a piece of rock 3 kilometers across, simply ceased to exist. No explosion, no debris, just gone. The bridge of the Kryn flagship went silent. That was 1% power from one weapon on one ship, Helena said quietly. I have 318 vessels. Now, withdraw, or learn why the galaxy was so eager to exile us. The Overlord's multiple eyes focused with new understanding, and for the first time, something like fear. The Council will hear of this. You've broken the exile accords. The accords died the moment you started genociding civilized species. Consider this humanity's formal reintroduction to galactic affairs. Helena leaned forward. You have 10 minutes to begin your retreat. After that, we stop asking nicely. The channel cut. James stepped beside her, voice low. Think they'll run? No, Helena said. The Kryn don't run. They'll try to swarm us, hoping numbers will overwhelm technology. She looked at him. Full combat deployment, all weapons free. And James? Ma'am? No holding back. The galaxy needs to remember why they feared us. Below, on Voranth's dying surface, Commander Kress watched through failing sensors as the two fleets maneuvered. Mira stood beside him, hardly daring to breathe. They're really here, she whispered. After everything the Council said about them, they're the ones who came. Taven nodded slowly. Sometimes the monsters you fear are the angels you need. The Kryn fleet surged forward, and the humans, ghosts from the rim of space, met them with fire that had been waiting 2 centuries to burn. Fire and trust. The battle unfolded like a symphony of destruction. Mira watched from the failing defense platform as human ships moved through the Kryn swarm with impossible grace. They didn't fight like any fleet she'd seen. No chaotic scrambling, no desperate gambits. Every movement was calculated, precise, almost beautiful in its lethality. Commander, the humans are hailing us, Mira said, her console flickering. They're offering emergency evacuation. Accept it, Taven ordered. Get our wounded off the platform. Mira, coordinate with their medical teams. Sir, I should stay at my post. That's an order, officer. Someone needs to liaise with them. You speak 7 languages and have diplomatic training. Go. The transport that docked 15 minutes later was sleek and efficient. Mira helped load the wounded, then found herself pulled aboard as the platform's structural integrity failed. Through the viewport, she watched the station that had been her home crumble into debris. The human pilot glanced back. We're heading to the Relentless. Medical bay is prepped for your people. Welcome aboard. Inside the flagship, Mira's breath caught. The corridors were pristine, the technology generations ahead of anything in the assembly. Crew members moved with purpose, their faces showing determination rather than fear. She was escorted to the medical bay where human doctors worked alongside sophisticated medical AI to treat Voranth wounded. You must be Officer Salvin. A voice spoke behind her in perfect Voranth dialect. She turned to find a human man, perhaps 30 cycles old, with warm brown eyes and a tactical uniform marked with lieutenant insignia. I'm James Ramirez, Tactical Coordination. Captain Vance asked me to make sure you're settled. I'm fine, Mira said, though her hands were shaking. I should be helping with the wounded. You've been at your post for over 30 hours. The doctors have it handled. James gestured to a nearby observation window. Come on, I thought you might want to see this. The window overlooked the battle. A Kryn dreadnought erupted in brilliant light as human weapons tore through its organic armor. But Mira noticed something else. Human ships positioning themselves between the Kryn and Voranth's evacuation routes, taking hits meant for the fleeing civilian transports. You're protecting the refugees, she said softly. Even when it costs you, James nodded. That's why we came back. The assembly forgot what it means to defend those who can't defend themselves. He paused. Your message reached us at the edge of charted space. Captain Vance didn't hesitate. We've been monitoring the Kryn expansion for months, waiting for the right moment. Why wait? Why not intervene sooner? Because the galaxy exiled us. We needed proof that some species still valued justice over politics. He turned to her. Your commander's plea was that proof. An explosion rocked the ship. James steadied Mira as alarms blared. Direct hit, port side, a voice called. Hull breach on deck 7. That's near here, James said. Stay close to me. They ran through corridors filling with emergency teams. James moved with practiced efficiency, helping seal bulkheads and directing crew. A secondary explosion threw them both against a wall. When Mira looked up, James was bleeding from a gash across his forehead, but still standing. I'm okay, he said, reading her expression. Takes more than that. But as they reached the medical bay, his legs gave out. Mira caught him, feeling his weight. Wounds and whispers. The medical bay had transformed into controlled chaos. Vorinth wounded lay beside human casualties, doctors moving between species with practiced efficiency. Mira half-carried James to an empty bed, ignoring the protests of a human medic who tried to take over. I've got him, she said firmly. The medic recognized the tone, the desperate need to do something, anything useful, and nodded, handing her supplies before moving to the next patient. James's injury wasn't serious, but the concussion had left him dazed. As Mira cleaned the wound, his hand caught hers. You don't have to do this. I'm fine. You're not fine. And you just saved my life in that corridor. She met his eyes. Let me return the favor. Through the window, the battle raged on. The Kryn were beginning to break formation, their numerical advantage meaningless against human precision. But the cost was visible. Several human ships burned, their crews fighting desperately to save their vessels. Why did you really come? Mira asked quietly as she worked. The truth, not the diplomatic answer. James was silent for a moment. Because we were you once. 200 years ago, humanity called for help when the synthesis attacked Earth. We broadcast on every frequency, begged the assembly for aid. His voice grew distant. They debated for 6 months while billions died. By the time they voted to send support, we'd already saved ourselves. And then they exiled us for the weapons we'd built to survive. Mira's hands stilled. I didn't know. Most species don't. The assembly erased it from the records, rewrote history to make us the aggressors. He looked at her. We swore then that if we ever heard another species pleading into the dark, we'd answer. No matter the cost, no matter the politics. The medical bay door opened. Captain Vance entered, her uniform scorched, but her bearing unshaken. She approached their bed, relief visible on her face. Lieutenant, status. Concussion, ma'am. I'll be back on duty within the hour. You'll rest for 6 hours minimum. That's an order. Helena turned to Mira. Officer Sullivan, your Commander Kress asked me to inform you that all evacuation transports have made it to safe distance. Thanks to your coordination efforts, we saved 93% of the wounded. Mira felt tears burn her eyes. Thank you. For all of this. For coming when no one else would. Helena's expression softened slightly. We heard you. That's what matters. She glanced between Mira and James, something knowing in her eyes. Lieutenant, Officer Sullivan has agreed to serve as liaison between our fleet and Vorinth Command. I'm assigning you as her military attaché once you're cleared for duty. Coordinate relief efforts. After Helena left, Mira continued treating James's wound in comfortable silence. The ship hummed around them, the sounds of battle fading as the Kryn began their retreat. What happens now? Mira asked. When this is over? James shifted, wincing. That depends on a lot of things. The Assembly will demand answers. There'll be tribunals, debates, probably threats. Humanity's return isn't going to be simple. But you'll stay. You won't just disappear again. He was quiet, then took her hand properly, lacing their fingers together. The gesture was intimate, crossing the barriers between their species. I don't know what command will decide, but I know that some things are worth staying for. Mira felt warmth spread through her chest. In the midst of war and chaos, something unexpected had bloomed, a connection forged in desperation and hope. Tell me about Earth, she said softly. I've only read the old records. What's it really like? James smiled, and for the next hour, as the ship's medical staff worked around them and the battle concluded outside, he painted pictures with words. Blue oceans and green forests, cities that touch the clouds, mountains that pierce the sky, a species that had learned to survive in exile and emerged stronger, though lonelier. Mira listened, captivated, and somewhere in his descriptions of distant sunsets and alien beauty, she realized she wanted to see it for herself, wanted to understand these people who had crossed the void for strangers. "You should rest," she finally said. "Doctor's orders. Only if you stay." She hesitated, then pulled a chair beside his bed. "I'll stay." As James drifted into healing sleep, Mira watched the stars through the viewport. The Kryn fleet was scattered, fleeing into dark space. Voranth still burned below, but the fires were dying. Her people would survive. They would rebuild, and perhaps, with humanity's return, the galaxy might remember what it had lost when it chose fear over. Part 5. New Dawn. 3 days after the battle, Commander Taven Kress stood in the conference room of the Relentless, facing a holographic assembly of Galactic Council representatives. Their expressions ranged from outrage to barely concealed fear. "This is a violation of the Exile Accords," Councillor Thrain of the Velkan Protectorate declared, his gills flaring. Humanity was forbidden from galactic space under penalty of what? Helena Vance interrupted coolly. "Annihilation? You already tried that. It didn't work." She gestured to the data streaming across screens. "While you debated procedures, the Kryn swarm eliminated 18 species. 18 civilizations erased because you were too concerned with protocol to act. The situations were complex, requiring diplomatic. They required action," Taven cut in, his voice harder than Helena had heard before. "Action that only humanity provided. Perhaps you should ask the 200,000 Voranth refugees why they're grateful the Terrans violated your accords." The council members shifted uncomfortably. Behind the conference room glass, Mira watched beside James, both of them in fresh uniforms. His hand found hers discreetly. "What are humanity's terms?" another counselor asked carefully. Helena smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Reinstatement, full voting rights, access to trade routes, and immunity from prosecution for our violations." She leaned forward. "Oh, and one more thing. Any species that requests aid gets it. No debates, no committees. When someone calls for help, the Assembly responds. Immediately. That's not how galactic governance works." "Then change how it works," Helena said simply. "Because humanity isn't asking permission anymore. We're back. You can either work with us or be irrelevant while we do what you won't." The transmission ended in uncomfortable silence. Taven turned to Helena, extending his hand in the human gesture he'd learned. "Thank you, Captain. For everything." She gripped his hand firmly. "Thank you for reminding us what we came back for." On the observation deck, Mira and James stood watching Voranth below. Reconstruction drones swarmed the surface, human and Voranth crews working together to rebuild what the Kryn had destroyed. The council accepted the terms. James said quietly, "Captain just got confirmation. Humanity is officially reinstated." "That's good," Mira replied, though her voice was uncertain. James turned to face her. "What's wrong?" "I'm happy you're staying. That humanity is back. But..." She struggled with the words. "Our worlds are so different. You'll return to Earth eventually, to your people, your life, and I'll stay here helping rebuild. We barely know each other, and yet it feels like more." James finished. He cupped her face gently. "Mira, I've lived 32 years in exile, watching stars through viewports, never staying anywhere long enough to call it home."
"Do you know what I realized these past 3 days?"
She shook her head, not trusting her voice. "Home isn't a place. It's people who make you want to stay." He smiled. Captain Vance approved permanent liaison assignments. I requested to remain with the Voranth reconstruction effort. "If you want me here," Mira's breath caught. "You'd stay? Give up returning to Earth?" "I'm not giving up anything. I'm choosing something better." He drew her closer. "Besides, someone has to teach you humans aren't all scary warriors. Some of us are pretty decent at gardening and terrible at cooking." She laughed, tears streaming down her face. "I can't cook either. Then we'll figure it out together." Their kiss was tentative at first, a bridge between worlds and species. But it deepened into something certain, a promise made amid the wreckage of war. Through the viewport, Earth's relief ships arrived in formation, massive vessels carrying supplies, technology, personnel. Humanity had come home to the galaxy, not as conquerors or exiles, but as the guardians they'd always meant to be. On the bridge, Helena Vance watched the same scene, a rare smile crossing her features. Beside her, Taven observed the reconstruction efforts. What happens now? He asked. Now? Helena considered. Now we remind the galaxy what it forgot. That strength without compassion is tyranny. That technology without ethics is destruction. And that no one should have to scream into the void and hear only silence. And if the Council tries to exile you again? Helena's smile sharpened. Let them try. We're not the frightened species they drove out 2 centuries ago. We're the ones who answered when it mattered. That's a legacy worth fighting for. Below, in the crystal gardens that were slowly being restored, Mira and James walked hand in hand through the ruins of the old world and the promise of the new. Different species, different origins, but united by something the galaxy had almost forgotten. Hope, freely given to those who needed it most. The stars above Vorinth no longer burned red. They shone clear and bright, watching over a world that had died and been reborn. And in the darkness between them, humanity's ships kept vigil. A promise made manifest. They had heard the call, they had answered, and they would never let the galaxy forget that someone, somewhere, still remembered mercy.